Welcome back to my channel. Today is episode number 2 of the design system series, where we will learn together how to build a design system in Figma. To build an effective design system, you usually use the atomic design method, which is of course inspired by chemics, and so you build it starting from the smallest elements, such as buttons, which are atoms. Then you move on and you build molecules like cards and then organisms. But before atoms, we have something which is smaller than that, and I like to call it subatomic. Usually it's called style guide, where you define your text styles, your colors, your icons and shadows maybe. And this is what we'll talk about today. As you can see, I already structured my file with the atomic design method. So I have subatomic elements, which are styles, as I said, colors, icons and shadows. And then I already made the sections for atoms with atom 1, which will be maybe a button, molecules and organisms. And then we will fill all these sections during this series. Let's jump into the action and start with textiles. So this part is where you usually define which font to use and also how to use your font. So let's say I'm building this design system for a mobile application. Of course, there are some rules to follow, which I will explain to you during this video. So for this design system, I decided to go with Helvetica Neue, which is a very popular font, which was also used by Apple before switching to the San Francisco, which is their proprietary font. And I usually start by typing something. Maybe you can just type lorem ipsum. And you start from here. Of course, it's really basic, but now I will show you. The way I decide how to use my font, the size, the weight, is that I put into the screen a frame which represents a phone screen, and then I put the text inside. And I usually like to start with the body style because it's the easiest one, because for body styles there are two main rules to follow. And the first one is from Apple. Apple says that when it comes to body style, it should be at least 17 points, while Google says that you can also use 16. I think that they are both true because of course it depends on the font. Some fonts work in 16 points, some fonts work in 17, and some other works in 18 because 16 and 17 are too small. Usually you have to trust your eyes and decide which is best for accessibility. But usually if you go with 17, you are always sure that it works. So let's put this in 17, and regular is just fine. Because of course maybe this looks a bit bold and maybe you are tempted to use the light, but this is not typography meant to be printed. So on devices, on screens, it's always better to have a bit more weight to your font for legibility basically. And now of course we need to have some hierarchy with our typography, because of course we don't want to have something like title, subtitle here, and then our body. Of course you can see that you don't have a hierarchy. If I zoom out, it's hard to scan this page. Of course the user won't know which thing is most important. He doesn't know how to read the text, so that's why it's important to give some hierarchy. And so now of course we're gonna define fonts which are bigger than our body and then also smaller. So we can start with a really big title, and I usually go with something between 32 and 34. So we can start with 34, and you can use bold with this one, and I think that this is like just fine. So this title will be our H1, and I like to call them this way. Of course these labels come from HTML, and this is a common way to name your styles. So after H1 we can go with H2. So H2, now we can start by removing some points. You can go maybe with 28, and now you can decide if you want to keep it bold, if you want medium. Usually you keep it bold, so you have another title with the same weight but just slightly smaller, because sometimes you need to have like two options to use. Then we can go with H3, and I think 22 will be fine. So as you can see already now, if I zoom out, this is what I meant by saying hierarchy. Of course, now the way you scan this page is that you see the H1, then the H2, then the H3, and of course sometimes if you are creative you can also put like H1 under an H1 under a body. And as you can see, if you zoom out, the first one you see is this H1 because it's bigger, and so you scan the page in a different way. So now we have H4, we can use 20, and maybe for this one we can go down to medium, so we have less weight to the font. So after headers, of course, we can make a subheader. When it comes to mobile, usually one subheader style is enough. So our body is 17, our subheader can also be like 18, maybe in medium. I think that this works. It's a lot similar to the H4 one, but it's not a problem. Maybe this can become bold, so that we have our styles like this, and then we have our body. And now we can go down in size. And with mobile, usually you have other 3-4 styles which are smaller than your body. So you can now go from 17 to 15. And this will be our body too. And then we can maybe do 13, which is body 3, or you can use it like captions or footnotes. And then we can have the smallest one, which can be like 11 or 10. I think 10 works in medium maybe, and this will be used pretty much just for navigation. So for example, in your bottom navigation bar where you have like home, profile, and you have the little label, usually is 10 or 11. And so as you can see now, we defined our first font styles. And of course this is not finished, because for each one of them we will have to give a different weight, because of course it's useful to have them in different weights. And what I mean by that is that, for example, H1, this is our standard H1, but maybe we need also one irregular, which will be something like H1 light. And usually you don't do it with H1, you start with H2, but it was just to explain to you. And so for example, if you go with H2 and then we switch to regular, the reason why you do it is I can show you, because sometimes maybe you are writing a title, but you need to emphasize just one part of that title. So for example, if I write my name is Andrea Bergonzi, then maybe I just want to highlight my name, so I have bold, and so as you can see, if you zoom out, you have more weight on the name, and so it's highlighted better. So we can do this also with H3 and H4. Our subheader can go to regular. And then for these body styles, which I can rename now, for this we need something with more weight, so they can go to so they can go to the medium size, just to have something more with more weight. Of course, for the same reason I already explained to you. Maybe you want to highlight some parts, or maybe sometimes it also depends on the colors you are using. It's better to have more weight on a font, and I can give you an example. For example, if we take body, of course with regular is working fine with a light color, but let's say we switch to dark mode, and then we have a black background under body, so body becomes white. Of course you can read it, this is not a problem, also because Helvetica is a pretty good font, but if I switch to medium, of course the legibility is better. Also when we go something like on the 13, which is our body tree, as you can see, if I switch to regular, maybe with some screens could be difficult to read, so it's always better to have also more weight to your font in your styles. So now we can remove the frame, and of course we are not finished, because when you are defining your text styles, of course you need to consider accessibility, and so you want to make sure that your font will always be easily read, and so sometimes you have to tweak also like the line 8 and the letter spacing, and I will give you an example with body, and then I will show you how to add these styles into your design system. So for example, with body, if I take it and then I make a frame of about like 300 pixels per like 200, and then I fill it with some text, and to do this I use this plugin, which is Lorem Ipsum, which automatically fills this frame. So if I write auto generate, of course, as you can see, this is already pretty good, but for example, you can notice that the line 8 is not enough. If you zoom out, you can see that this text starts to blend a bit, and so what you're gonna do is to change this line 8. For example, now was on 20, which was the automatic line 8, but maybe we can go up a bit more, maybe with 22 is enough. Yeah, I think this works, because yes, 23 is too much, so 22 is fine. And then you also want to tweak the letter spacing, because body is something which is used when you have to read something. So maybe you use body in an article and you have to read a lot of text, so of course this should be perfect. So we can also tweak it, and you usually tweak it with percentage. So we can start maybe by adding a 0.5 just to see. And yeah, this is clean. Maybe we can go to 1% with this one. And so if you also make it this, yeah, I think that like these settings are fine. Like 22 line 8 and 1% letter spacing. And of course I can show you also, like with titles is important. If we take our H1, we can call it like really big title. As you can see, this works better because usually you have just one line, so you don't tweak maybe the line 8, you can just type the value and not keep it in automatic. But maybe you want to slightly to the letter spacing, and sometimes you also go in negative, so maybe I can do minus 0.5%, because this is like big, so maybe it looks cleaner with less spacing between letters, but remains legible because it's big and bold. So now we defined our styles, and now we want to add them to our style guide. So how you do this? So this is in our defined H1 style. So you click on these 4 dots and then you click to plus, and you give it his name H1, and you can also add a description. What's it for? You can say use for really big titles, I don't know, something, but you can give a description. And then you click on create style, and as you can see now, if you deselect everything, you have it on your textiles section, and if you click on it, this now is H1. If you want to detach your style from the H1, you have to click this. So as you can see now, you can modify these parameters, and you can also go back and define your settings by clicking on this settings icon, and you can tweak them from here. And now you have to do it for, of course, all your styles. So now, as you can see, we finished adding all our styles to our design system, and now I can show you like the last tip, which is if you search for this plugin, which is auto documentation, you can see that you can document your colors and your fonts. So you just have to select like a preview content, and if I click on document all fonts, as you can see, it's working, and now he finished. And so now I have already all my fonts documented into my file, which is of course important because design systems are meant to be reused, of course also by other people in your team, in your company, or maybe for example this design system, when I finish this series, will be published on the community, so of course all of you can use it. So it's important to have everything written down also for developers, so that they can come and see all the parameters. So today I showed you how to define your text styles for your design system. I hope you found it interesting, and of course that you enjoyed this video. If you enjoyed this video, guys, remember to leave a like and subscribe to my channel. Next week we'll go on and talk about colors, so of course stay tuned. As always, may the force be with you. Ciao!